Good day, I'm Chris Cordetti, Dr. Jerome Corsi's producer. Dr. Corsi's in Ohio working on efforts to inform people about the dangerous voter roll algorithm there and in other U.S. states. For today's The Truth Central, we're going to take you to Dr. Corsi's August 14th, 2024 town hall session in Medina, Ohio. That's where he explains what could be dangerous potential cyber election interference as part of the Real Steel series here on this podcast. You can find out more about this effort and how to donate to help Dr. Corsi, Andrew Paquette, Dr. Carlene Graves, and the team expose this threat and stop the real steal. That's through the website, gods5stones.com. That's gods5stones.com, all spelled out. Now, here's Dr. Jerome Corsi's presentation, Uncut and Uncensored.
Now, this is going to be, I think, pretty revolutionary information. This is kind of game-changing. What we've discovered that the Democrats have done, and really I think it's more the intelligence agencies working with the Democrats. Oh, by the way, I want to start off by saying what I always say, and that is that in the end, God always wins. God is going to win here, too. God's sovereign. God's already written the ending to this play. And the ending is not that Satan wins. The ending is Satan goes back to hell. And we're in the process of sending him there. So I want everybody here to be of sound heart and courage, because we have one thing that Satan does not have. We have divine guidance, and he has denied that. And that makes all the difference in the world, our ability to beat these people, because they are evil. They're not going to take our children and make sexual freaks out of them. They're not going to take children to Medina and tell children you've raised. They don't know whether they're a boy or a girl. They are not going to take the United States of America and make it into a sewer. There's too many good people in America. They're not going to take God from our lives. We're putting God back in our lives, putting God back in our families, putting God back in our whole idea of reproduction. Reproduction rights are a man and a woman married, have children, to raise those children in moral education. That's what keeps marriages together. It's not for divorce. It's not for sexual pleasure. It's for the ability to create and bring forth life, which only God can bestow. And we need to end abortion. These people have a losing agenda. You know, the weird thing about Satan, if you study Satan, it's always got a clever plan. You know, we don't need God. We can perfect everything. We're going to depopulate. We'll be transhuman, and then we'll have all the resources of the world for ourselves. That's what they think. Well, the only problem with Satan's plan is he forgot to tell us, when he tends to depopulate, that we think it's a good idea. We're not particularly in favor of being exterminated. And Satan might have to give that some consideration. We say we're not doing it. Satan is the one who's going to get exterminated. So what I'm telling you tonight is essentially what their plan is, and the steps that we're going to, and you all know I've thought a lot about this. They wanted to put me in prison with the Mueller investigation. I'm sure how many of you follow me, they want me to put me in prison. Yeah, well, I told them I wouldn't take their plea deal. They could put me in prison the rest of their lives. I didn't have a tie with Julian Assange. And they did not indict me. They ended the Mueller investigation. Had I taken the plea deal, they would have gotten Donald Trump on Russian collusion. And Donald Trump knows that. I said no, and they ended the investigation in shame. Okay, well, they're going to end this in shame, too. And I'll show you what they're planning to do. And by the way, we created a 501c3. It's called God's, G-O-D-S, no apostrophe, God's 5 Stones. God's, G-O-D, no apostrophe, S. Spell out 5, F-I-V-E, S-T-O-N-E-S, gods5stones.com. It comes from the Daniel story, of course, against Goliath, when Daniel picked up 5 smooth stones from a brook. And they were the right 5 stones, and he got Goliath. We're going to get Goliath here tonight, and I'm going to tell you how. Okay, now what do the Republicans plan to do? Well, they're first of all, we can't trust the Republican Party. I was born and raised in Cleveland. I was born in East Cleveland. I went to St. Ignatius High School, went to Case Western Reserve, and I got my PhD at Harvard in 1972, in political science. I left here in 1968. I lived on Argyle Avenue in East Cleveland, Ohio, by Shaw and Haight. Many of you know where that is. And Medina, I'm pleased to see, is still a small community with mom and pop stores and community, and this is the way America should be. And America ought to come out of the cities, which are getting to be Democratic hellholes. Now, what the Republican Party intends to do, we forget about the Republican Party. Donald Trump is not the Republican Party, he's MAGA. And the attempt to kill Donald Trump was a government assassination attempt. They opened a window to kill him. They intended to kill him. That was just like I did in my book on Kennedy, which is just out. The CIA killed Kennedy. That, by the way, proves it definitively. We're all trying, yeah. We'll show that one. Can you show that one? Okay, show that one. That'll do. You can show that one. That'll be it. You can take my computer out of there. Just go ahead and read your thing. Yeah, that has everything I want to show on it right there. That'll help greatly if you can get that shown. Okay, so here's what the deal is. They had Biden in the White House, and you all saw Biden. Biden was mentally incompetent. Anybody here think Biden knew what he was doing? No. Biden was being led around. It was senior abuse. Of course, that's the way Obama wanted it for his 3rd term. I mean, I've gone around saying that what they really preferred was Weekend at Bernie's. They should have had a dead guy and done AI. Then you wouldn't have had to worry about it. That'd be their next president. This is ridiculous. This is deep state. Okay, so the plan was that Biden was so mentally incompetent that he wasn't going to poll well. And if he didn't poll well, they couldn't steal the election by stealing the vote as they did in 2020. We all saw them steal the vote in 2020. Okay, and the problem was I watched it too, and I couldn't believe all these ballots coming in. I couldn't figure out, but yet the elections certified. They certified these elections. I said, how do they do that? Because obviously, they are making these ballots up in the middle of the night and trucking them in, and nobody had signed those ballots. Any rational person watching this knew this was a steal going on. And the media is telling you that, what you're seeing with your lying eyes isn't happening. Well, you all knew. Anybody here doubt that it was stolen in 2020? How many people here think it was stolen in 2020? Yeah, everybody knows it was. You can't fool the American people. Okay, God's still in our hearts, in our minds, in our souls. God shows us the truth. We see the truth. Truth wins. So they had to get rid of Biden. And Biden didn't want to go. Nancy Pelosi architected it. They finally threatened Biden. They exposed everything. These people are satanic. So they are all compromised. They have sex parties in Washington with drugs. They fly them off, pedophilia. They film them. They pay them money. Mitch McConnell's got a Chinese wife worth hundreds of millions of dollars in China. If he doesn't do what China wants, their family's dead. They're all compromised and bought. And it's cheap. We have the corruption is bad. All of our institutions are corrupt. My solution, the federal government, is move the entire bureaucracy to Death Valley and give them all the sun and solar and wind they want. See how many stick around. It's the only way to get rid of them. So their plan now is, okay, they say, well, they're stuck with Kamala because they couldn't get rid of Biden with the 25th Amendment. She had to become president. Well, they don't want her to be president. So they're keeping Biden in there for at least a while. And she's vice president. She picks this guy to be her vice presidential candidate that has this record of stolen honor. And it's a disgusting human being. These two people, they ended up with the two worst candidates they could get. The two candidates they didn't want are the ones they got. Kamala Harris, who about 2 bit whore, let's just tell her what it is. And slept her way into this position. And made no qualms about it. Okay, and the guys she slept with weren't particularly, moral or handsome or anything else. They were there as corrupt as she was. And everything she did was hating people. She wants to free the criminals, and she wants to have honest people who are defending their homes with weapons be put in jail. Well, it's insane. This is backward. This is completely morally bankrupt. So they know they're not going to be able to win an election with Kamala. Because, if Kamala couldn't get as many people to come out as she gave money away. Nobody's going to come to see Kamala. But they're gaslighting her. Kamala's really doing well. Look at her polls. Her polls are now rivaling Trump. Trump doesn't know how to speak to a woman of color. Well, what color is this woman? She's Jamaican. We're just going to start worried about whether people are color. Well, white's a color too. And white's not one color, everything's a blend. So by the time these people are done, the schizophrenics are running America. And we're not going to let the schizophrenics run America. So the plan is, they know they can't win. They know they can make the polls look close. And at the end, they're going to say, there was a surge for Kamala, and all the votes came in at the last minute, and she won. Now, what I'm going to show you tonight, if we can get this to work, and otherwise I'm going to explain it to you, is that we have discovered that some really intelligence agent geniuses have gotten inside the state board of election. And what they've done is they've taken the state board of election voter rolls, and they've put into them secret codes. They've encrypted them. Okay, when you got troops in the field and you want to talk with your troops, you write a code, and you communicate in the code. You have to have the code to understand what the message is. Everybody's got that, right? That's called cryptography, code writing, code breaking. It's a specialized art. It's very difficult to write a code. It's very difficult to break a code. So what they did was they went into the states. Let's take New York State. New York State's got 4 million voter records. What they did was they wrote a cryptographic scheme where the state board of election voter numbers are created by a mathematical formula that disassociates that number from when you were registered. Okay, so I explain it this way. You all have children, we all have children. You say, well, my firstborn child was such and such. Well, that's the one born first. My thirdborn child was the one that was musically inclined. Well, number third is the third born. You number your kids by the order in which they're born. You don't call the third one number 1. You don't call the second one number 5. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We got 5 kids. They're ordered by how they're born. Well, when you encrypt it, the state comes along and they say, well, your first child's number 1. But I'm sorry to tell you, your second child is number 12. Your third child is number 32. And your fourth child is number 43. Now we got 54. We got 65. those are your children. So I don't have 65 children. Well, yes you do. Right here, you can see 65. I got 5 children. Well, it happens that between your first and your second, which is now your 12th, there are 10 other children I put there. And they aren't yours. And 3 of them don't exist. I made them up. And you can't tell, because they all look real. They've all got real state IDs that I created. I made them up. That's called an algorithm. What is an algorithm? Algorithm is a fancy number for a formula. So what I did is I took your first child, I added 11, so your second child became 12. Added 11, next child became 23. At 11, 34. I just added 11. Now adding 1, 1, or 1, 1, 1, or 1, 1, 1, 1 in a cryptographic number scheme, I'm writing a code. So, the Japanese don't know what I'm doing after Pearl Harbor. I can write a code. I use this kind of a numbering scheme to alter my data. These 1, 1, 1, 1 is called a rep unit. Special number of mathematics that you use to repeat. And you would add it into the code. Now, a genius named Anthony Paquette got a hold of the New York State database registration. He got a hold of it. And he saw this numbering scheme was in there. Now, he's a very strange guy. Paquette is a computer graphics artist. And he can conceptualize computer graphics in topological space. In other words, I can do this. You imagine mathematically. I've taken very, very advanced math. I never took a course in mathematics beyond high school, but I'm kind of a savant. I understand what the equations do. I can visualize them. I'm not particularly good at adding, subtracting, and dividing, but I've run randomized field experiments for the National Science Foundation and never took a course in research management. I taught statistics and never took a course in statistics. I taught advanced math and never took courses in it. So I get this stuff. And when I look at it, I see what they did and Paquette did. He said there's a code in here. There's a secret language in here. The New York State voter database has a secret in it which hides, first of all, it creates false records that look real. And secondly, like in a card scheme, did we get it? Don't worry. I like not yet. That's a positive attitude. Not yet. He didn't say no. He said not yet. That's good. Okay, so the card dealing scheme, first of all, you create false marked cards. But that's not enough. Then you got to get them back into the deck. So next I go into the casino, and I take the blackjack table, and you've got a 5-card shoe that's dealing the cards. You think that's got to be legitimate. Except I've marked the cards and I'm dealing you my marked cards. So the cards you get are my marked cards. I know where I've placed the false records. You don't know. And if you look, you won't find them. Okay, is everybody with me now what this means? You getting it? It's devious. It's brilliant. It took geniuses to put this in. It took a genius to figure it out. And Paquette taught in the Netherlands for a year. He taught himself to speak Dutch, and he went to the Netherlands. He taught at the university level. Told me he had to have a PhD. He went to the London school. He got a PhD, about 2 years, and the top scientific publisher published his books. Got 2 books published in computer graphics. And he figured this out. He also writes a Substack on interpreting dreams. He dreamt the solution. God showed it to him at night. He visualized it. He visualized the math. And he proved that somebody put a secret code in the New York State database. Okay, does that bother you all?
Yeah.
Anybody here think that's right to do?
No.
Well, it's damn wrong is what it is. And it's It's satanic. Now, it turns out that we found codes in 13 states. Every state I'm looking at has got a secret code in. Produce a secret code. Ohio, your database, I'll try to show it to you if I get this to work. Your voter base is skewed with a secret code. Okay, so in Huron County was over by Toledo, and it's rural, mostly Republican, small, not particularly consequential. They do it right. You come in first to register, you get state ID, voter number 1. Come in second to register, you get number 2. But now we go over to the counties outside Youngstown, where they're heavily Democratic. And I don't know if anybody's been to Youngstown recently, but it's not known to be the least corrupt city in Ohio. And so therefore, in Ohio, when you do a scattergram, a graph of where the votes are, they're all in one quadrant of they have no relationship to when people register. And that they're skewed so you can hide votes. Now, why do you want to hide votes? Why do I want to make up fake votes? Well, it's easy. Okay, now, there's only 2 or 3 guys here who do this in the State Board of Election. And they don't tell anybody they're doing it. In fact, LaRose doesn't know anything about it. He thinks it's all legitimate. He thinks he solved the problem by scrubbing out people who don't live here anymore. He didn't find the ones they created. Because he can't. They look real. You'd have to go out and see, if there's 1 million people, you'd have to go out and see 1 million people, see how many said, that's me. To find out somebody had 30 different registrations, all of which looked almost alike, all of which looked legit, if that was the only one you saw. All of which, when they request a mail-in ballot, have a real number in the state system. So that's a legitimate number. And then that fake ballot, that fake mail-in ballot is printed and it's run through the machine. And say that number voted. So the number that requested a mail-in ballot, voted a mail-in ballot, that's a certifiable vote. Because they match. But the person doesn't exist. The person died 25 years ago.
What?
And you won't know that unless you did a search of that person. Now, they don't do that. They sit down and they certify if the numbers match. Okay, so New York has got 4 million records in the database. 2 million of them are fake. They got people registered who registered in 1850. Well, I guarantee you, someone born in registered in 1850 isn't voting today. They're dead. Okay, they took a famous identity theft, and they gave him 35 registrations in the database just to be a joke, an inside joke. Okay, they take these votes that are in here, you won't know they're, and so they say, we got 300,000 that are foolproof, and we can vote them for mail-in ballots. And this 300,000, this is our treasure. These are the 2 million that are fake. We got 300,000 we know are in the bank. Okay, so I'm a political scientist. I'm data-oriented. And when I was in Cleveland, going back into the 1960s, when I was about 15 years old, just starting out in college, my college professors of political science would say to me, oh, Jerry, we're going down to WJW election night. Well, you've ever WJW in Cleveland, Ohio. And what we're going to do is we are going to, hold on. Ben, I'll call you in the morning. Thanks. That's one of my geniuses. This guy is a genius, and he has validated everything I'm telling you tonight is true. Huh? What do I have to do? You can't fix it? No, you can do it. You can sit down. Exactly. Thanks for trying. Everybody get this? Everybody follow? I'm painting the picture. Okay. And you got a question, ma'am?
Yeah, I wanted to know, how do they make this work when it obviously is adding extra voters, so it won't match up with the census, right?
Nobody cares. They never check. Okay.
I got a question.
Yes, sir.
So where does that delegate mailed to? Who fills it out?
Okay. The ones they're using never get mailed to anybody. They just get printed and run through. Actually, they might not even get printed. They get requested, they get voted. And the system does it all. Requested and voted it. Now, they may run it through the machine as a formality. They may run all 300,000 through the machine. And they may use 10,000. Throw the others away. Because, see, the election is happening in the computer. It's not happening in the voting. Okay, so I go down to WJW. My job was to sit there and profile elections. So this is now, I'm talking about 1960s. I'm talking about Ralph Locher and Carl Stokes, if you guys remember those races, okay? And so I sit there and say, well, you know, here's where the Democrats are, here's where the Republicans are, here's the votes, here's the precincts. And Ralph Locher's got to get these votes out of this precinct or he's in trouble. Carl Stokes, and I'd watch those and see how they were doing. So early on I could say, Carl Stokes is pulling ahead because Locher's falling behind. In about half an hour I could say, it's now the chances of Locher catching up are 20%. Then we get 15% into the vote. I'd say, you could call it Locher's lost. Because there's no way you can make that up. The people who were yet to vote were in districts they weren't going to vote for him. Okay, so when I was doing a Fit for Command in 2004, if you remember, I wrote a Swift Vote book against John Kerry, and I was in Ohio doing a lot of work in Ohio to do a state at that time. It was pivotal. And John O'Neill, my co-author, calls me in the morning and says, Jerry, I think we're going to lose. And I said, John, relax. I said, I've been watching Cuyahoga County. I was born and raised in Cuyahoga County. And out of Cuyahoga, Kerry's not drawing enough votes out of Cuyahoga County. So the turnout is between 1% and 3% under where it needs to be for him to win. So Kerry's going to lose. Now, he's going to lose narrowly, but I see the downstate vote going very strongly right now. And it's not going for Kerry, it's going for George W. Bush. And if he carries rural Ohio, he's going to win by maybe 1 or 2%. Well, you remember how close 2004 was. Well, I was calling that at 10 o'clock in the morning. Because I could see, as a political scientist, I knew how it was. So when I got this computer done, I got these votes in here. Only I know where they are, because I got the code. You're the Board of Election, you're LaRose. You don't know diddly what's in there. I'm the one running the election. You have no idea what I'm doing. So it starts out, and I'm saying, I'm going to take some of my votes that I made up, and I'm going to start voting, mail in votes pretty heavily to keep it. Well, first of all, what I do is I come to the GOP and tell them, you're going to lose, because I'm arrogant. These guys are all arrogant. They come to the Democrats and say, how much do you want Camilla to win by? You want her to win by 1% or 3%? You want her to win by 5%? You want her to win early in the day? You want it to be a late come on? Tell me how you want it to look. Well, I can run that this afternoon through the computer. I did a simulation and have it all modeled. Know exactly how I was going to do it. On election day, I start watching how it's actually happening. I adjust my model. I start tuning up what I want it to show. I start producing the fake ballots I want, start voting them. And if I miscalculate, I stop the counting. And then I produce 20 or 30,000. Oh, look, they suddenly all came in overnight. And they were all for Camilla. We had a surge. We didn't have any surge. People say, wait a minute, I was at those polls. There were no people showing up. Well, it didn't have to show up because that's not where the surge was occurring. The surge was occurring in my computer. I could run the entire election this afternoon and have 3% where Camilla won because it's all a Truman Show. You think the voting is happening. I threw the voting away. I don't count it. What goes on in the machines and changes, that's artifacts of what I'm doing. And I don't care what it shows because I may just throw all those results out and you won't know the difference. Because you'll think that the way I'm reporting them out of my computer and certifying them is what happened. It only happened in my computer, but I was in control of the show because I wrote the code, I coded your database, I controlled from the beginning the entire operation. You get it? Anybody here confused? If you're confused, raise your hand. I want everybody to understand this. Yes?
Where are you adding the votes?
Well, I add the votes because, remember, I got 300,000 people over here fake. So I'm watching it and I'm saying, Camilla's doing a little badly in a couple of the precincts in Cuyahoga County. So I start pumping up the fakes requesting mail-in ballots in those precincts. So I start adding fake votes.
So your computer is talking to Cuyahoga County's computer.
My computer's not talking to anybody. I'm controlling it all here and I'm the reporting. I don't care what kind of...
You're the end reporter.
I'm the end reporting. My computer that counts. Okay, and if I want to, I'll push it down to their computer to make it show up in their computer. Yes?
So we can knock on doors and be poll observers and spend a miserable 15-hour day at the Board of Elections, and it doesn't mean a damn thing.
Doesn't mean a damn thing.
Unless they fix it, is that right?
Unless they did. What the left has done is they sent everybody down the wrong trail. Because you think people are voting. Ha ha. They know they're voting. People aren't voting. They don't care if people vote. Now it's got to look good enough so that it's believable. And with Biden, people still have it hard. How did 81 million people vote for Biden? Biden was holding these car events that looked like drive-in movies from the 1950s. People in cars. There were only 9 people in the car. And I don't know what they were listening to, but I bet it was the music, not Biden. And it was over, they drove away. That was a campaign event for Biden during the pandemic. He didn't have 81 million people vote for him. It was a joke. Yes. Question, did somebody have a question over here? Yeah.
Well, then they were finding out that more people were voting according to the records than there were people registered to vote.
That's because I voted more of my fakes in that district than were registered. Because you didn't know how many were registered. I put people in that district who just voted. I had 10% more in my records than were registered, and I could vote them. Then they showed up in your district. Yes, and then yes.
I have 2 questions. What are the 13 states? The other question is, how long has this been going on? This just happened with the election in 2020.
It started in 2007 when they changed the law, when they demanded that there be state IDs. Well, they did that because they wanted to get rid of the county IDs. Because, see, the counties registered you in order of when you registered, you got your number. It was done honestly at the counties. But when it went to the states, they could take the county data and they could transform it with numerical manipulation into their phony numbers that created space for them to put phony records. Yes?
What were the 13 states?
Well, I'll give it to you. The key states that we're looking at right now, Ohio's right at the top of the list. That's why I'm here. And by the way, I got top confirmation yesterday from one of the key people in this state. I'm not going to mention who right at the moment, but they're endorsing what I want to do, which I'm going to explain in a couple minutes, which is I want an audit of this. I want this audited. And I want the people of Ohio told that your database is coded for cheating. Now, I'm not going to say, I told Sidney Powell, who I know very well, known Sidney Powell for years, and I told Giuliani, don't go out and say you got the Kraken. Don't go out and say you can prove voter fraud. Don't go out and say you can prove the election in 2020 was stolen. Because those elections were certified. Okay, now they may have been fraudulently certified by the schemes I'm talking about, but you're challenging a certified election, which means you're challenging the election process itself. And that verges on undermining trust in elections, which could be a crime. You're demeaning the Dominion computers. You're saying the Dominion computers can change votes. The Dominion computers can change votes, but those votes can't be certified. I can make up 50,000 votes in the computer, just changing the numbers around, but they can't be certified because they can't be tied back to a voter legitimate ID that actually legitimately voted. What I've described to you by the algorithms is I've created apparently legitimate state numbers, but they're fake. But they appear legitimate, and they appear tied to that number voting. Okay, so that's certification. It's tough to break. And if you challenge it and you're wrong, the courts won't hear your case because you haven't explained how the certification was done. And the courts are not going to challenge that. Now, I said we're going to use a totally different tactic. I want to go into the Ohio with the permission of LaRose. I want LaRose to say, we're going to do this. We're going to see if Dr. Corsi's right. And if there's numerical alteration in the Ohio database, and we could show it, we want to know that. And so he said, look, I'm a candidate, I'm running for office. I don't want to have my career depend on a database that's been altered by a secret code. I want to know the secret code's in there. And you're the state treasurer, you're state secretary of state. You're telling me this is a legitimate database. You've had people go out and canvass and remove all the ones that are wrong. All the ones they removed that were wrong were the ones that were obviously wrong. You didn't find the secret ones. And by the way, once they vote the secret ones, they erase them, so they're gone. And you have to find them through the deletions, which Paquette did. Paquette cracked the code. Paquette solved the Enigma machine. It was a genius operation. Once he did that, he opened the door to the fact that all across the country, we are going to be voting with databases that allow the election to be run. It could be run in a black box run by 3 people. It could be run by a very small group of people. And the state secretaries in charge of voting, the boards of election, even the members of the board of election who were in on the scheme, wouldn't know what was happening. Because you'd have to take all the voters that were in the database and go out and ask them, are you real? You'd have to canvass everybody. You'd have to canvass 1 million people. And they're not going to do that. When the votes are tallied, they're just going to look to see if the numbers match. They're not going to see if those were real people. They're not going to look at the original registration. Okay? Yes?
Can this be done before the election? Is it possible?
I could run it this afternoon. I could run the entire election this afternoon.
Really?
Yeah, I could run the entire election nationwide this
Do you need
afternoon.
us to put pressure on anybody?
Yeah, we're going to need a lot of pressure. Yes, sir.
So we were told in 2016 that they couldn't change the algorithms fast enough to favor Hillary because of the enormous amount of voters that came out for Trump. They didn't anticipate that. Is that true?
Well, actually what they said was Hillary was mad because you said you didn't use the algorithms.
Yeah.
Said you didn't use it.
But they did. They didn't.
They didn't think they had to. They overestimated.
Right.
They thought she was going to win by such a margin. They just didn't bother doing this.
Okay, so then 2020, they named Dominion, that name came up a lot, with running the crooked ship. And I read that they went to court, or I read somewhere that Dominion was being sued for millions for wrongful doing. And then I didn't hear anything for like 6 months or so. And then I heard judge rules in favor of Dominion.
Yeah, because see, the allegation was that Dominion had rigged the election because they changed votes. Well, Dominion changed votes. But there are a lot of reasons why they changed votes. And changing votes in Dominion, they don't, that's unimportant because those aren't certifiable. Those are just artifacts. Dominion can say, yeah, we changed them, we were readjusting, we got these tabulations, we readjusted. We weren't cheating, okay? And you can't prove we were cheating because there are legitimate reasons why the votes were changing. That's not where the fraud occurred. They wanted you to go there, so you'd lose. They wanted you to go there, so Giuliani would be bankrupt. They wanted you to go there so Sidney Powell had to do a plea deal. Sidney Powell pursued a case she couldn't win because they led her down a rabbit hole that they wanted her to go down, knowing that that's not where the fraud occurred. Fraud occurred in the Board of Election. The fraud occurred before the voting ever started. Yes, sir.
So the important part is where the fraud is going to occur. And that's through the DMV issuing licenses and registering people so they have a valid number to go with the vote for 20 million illegals that have come over the last.
That's a big part of it.
Right?
That's a big part of it. That creates a large pool that they can use. These guys know what they're doing. I mean, they're not just picking random records to falsify. They're picking records that are going to be tough to prove they were false. And there's lots of records. So look, you've got credit card databases. You miss a payment on your credit card because you forgot to send it in. They call you up. They know you missed a payment. Well, you didn't pay us $23. You owed us $23. We want the $23. When are you going to pay it? Okay, now, what I say is you ought to use the credit card database for voting. And we ought to use the voting database for credit cards. Nobody'd ever pay a penny on a credit card. You'd have 35 of them in your wallet. Nobody would know who you are. Yes.
Does LaRose, I'm under the impression that you had time to speak with LaRose directly?
Not yet. I was going to speak with him today, didn't get connected. May get connected tomorrow.
Okay. We need him to understand because he really does not get this at all.
Well, he will get it by the time I'm done.
You guys could be our heroes.
We're here about it. You run everything.
Yeah, what do you do?
Okay, here's what you do. Here's what you do. You say, the Rose says, wait a minute. We're going to, okay, is Corsi right? And you say, we're going to send in here some lawyers and some audit teams. I got top CIA qualified, NSA qualified, DIA cryptographers who do it professionally, willing to put on stationery their opinion that there are mathematical alterations that are obvious in at least 13 states in the database, including Ohio. They're ready to put that on writing to the pros. These are guys who are impeccable. These are guys who have world-class credentials. They work for the NSA, they work for the National Security Agency, they work for the CIA, they work for the Defense Intelligence Agency, they work for various the military. These are people who write codes and break codes. Many of them are Marine trained. Many of them are top classified security agents whom I know, who I've shown this to, and they are willing to put it on their stationery that the state databases in all the states they've looked at so far are mathematically altered to permit cheating. Now they say, the beauty of what we're saying is, I'm saying, I don't know if they were used. I don't know if there's been any cheating. What I know is that this isn't right. The alteration of a state board of election voter registration database by mathematical manipulation is inherently wrong. Okay, so we're in Medina, and I grew up in Ohio, and I see it's coming down to, it's a warm night, his porch is out here, and some gentleman with his 50-year bride sitting on the porch trying to cool off before they go to bed. They don't want to run the air conditioner or pay for the air conditioner. And he says to her, Marco, what do you think about this algorithm in the state voter record? She says, it ain't right. That's all it takes. We don't have to do anything but say it ain't right. And it ain't going to be used. Not in our time, not in our day. And anybody who uses it is going to be run out of the state. Yes, ma'am, up here. Behind them, you. Yes, ma'am.
Is this happening in non-presidential elections as
Yes.
well, down ballot?
We probably lost a lot of elections in the last 20 years we didn't know about. That were stolen. Yes.
Did you indicate that the person who cracked the code for Ohio was Mr. Paquette?
Yeah, Paquette, see what you do, Paquette ran scattergraphs.
Did he do it, did he solve it in Ohio for all?
He has not solved it. There are algorithms in virtually every county in Ohio that skew the data. The mathematical formulas are not yet deciphered. We don't yet know what the particular formulas were used. In other words, in New York, I can tell you that it was a spiral cipher, and that's a particular coding cipher which is well known to coders, and it works with rep units. I can show you mathematically how it works. Tell you they were resorted back into the deck by a Caesar cipher, and which places them in a very hard place to find, and identifies them with a algorithm ID, which you know and no one else knows, where you can find them and nobody else can find them. So I know how the entire system mathematically was done in New York. It's cracked, it's broken. It's like the Enigma machine. I can read all the codes. They all compiled Hitler and I can read all the codes. I know how to dial the dials. In Ohio, I don't know how the codes were set, but I know there are codes and it is done. It will take us some time to actually get the formulas, but they're there. Because this is not the natural way data shows up. And if it shows up naturally, in Huron County, they didn't bother. They altered the counties in which they intend to cheat. Yes.
So there's got to be, I understand what you're saying more or less about the computer codes and the algorithms.
Right.
But in the end, if they need 100,000 votes to sway an election, there still has to be 100,000 ballots they have to generate as well. Because if there's 100,000 more votes than there are ballots, that's going to raise some ire. So is there a component where they're actually bringing in and creating fake ballots as well?
They can, but you're overestimating their ability to count these things. So what they do is, okay, so the mail-in ballots come in, and first of all, the first thing they do is they separate the vote from the cover sheet, which has the signature and the number. So now you don't know who's vote. You don't know how the person voted. You just got the cover sheet. You can't associate it with the vote. So you don't know who they voted for. That's the problem right there. Secondly, you're supposed to keep these all in a pile. Well, by the time you got a pile of 100,000 things, you start losing. You might end up 20,000 short. What happened to that 20 out dog ate them? They get thrown away. I mean, we couldn't find them. You know, you think these elections are squeaky clean and everybody's got all the records. Well, first thing that happens is machines break down. They come and say, you got to wait to vote. You know, you got the wrong number. They argue with you. You vote. You don't know. You push the lever. You don't know what happened with your vote. You get a mail-in ballot. You don't know where it went. Somebody opens it up. They say they ran it through the machine.
So what you're saying basically, if you have 100,000 votes more than you have ballots, they're going to say, well, that's close enough.
That's close enough. We couldn't find the rest. Well, what do you mean you couldn't find theirs? Well, they voted that we have their numbers, they ran it through some machine, then we lost the paper. Well, I'm sorry about that. I guess we lost the paper. Yes.
Is that what happened in Georgia?
It's largely what happened in Georgia, yeah.
They're saying there's like, I don't know how many votes that are completely missing.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to missing. What do you mean they're missing? Well, they used to be in this closet over here. We went in that closet. I guess the maid threw them away. What do you mean the maid threw them away? Well, we don't, we're supposed to keep that pile of paper. The maid didn't know what it was. She threw it away. Okay, well, can we get it? No, they're gone. Yes, ma'am.
What's the best case scenario solution at the state level, at the county level, and for individuals?
Well, first of all, what's got to happen is it's probably going to take me about a month to get this across the country. We're going to need to raise some money in order to hire some experts and pay people to get it all validated. I'll probably be traveling a lot for this time. They want me to come down to Oklahoma, and then they want me, there's about 6 states that are wanting to do this. And what I'm doing is I'm validating what they've got, because they've got the abnormalities that show up as a result of this process. So they've got piles of ballots that were run through the machines that weren't folded and that were never mailed anywhere. They've got precincts that never voted like this before, proportionally for this candidate. They don't know how it happened. Got more votes in the precinct than ever were there. They have things showing up at the end and they were all for Biden. They had trucks coming in the middle of the night with ballots. They don't know where they came from. And all this is a mess. Okay, so what we have to say is this thing is what, in the military they used to call FUBAR, which means messed up beyond all recovery. You got to throw this thing away. You can't fix this. It is so broken. And what you've got to realize is it's broken on purpose.
Right. So, but if this is put in front of LaRose, and let's just say by some miracle he sees what you're talking about, right? What would the action be that you'd want him to take the next day? What would we want to expect?
Well, the first thing is going to be the expletive deleted.
Yeah.
What are we going to do?
Paper ballots.
That's what I'm wondering. Does that solve it? Paper ballots?
We can't use this database. What are we going to do with this database? I'd recommend you throw it all away, and if we had a Department of Justice, I'd call them in. But forget about that. We can't use this.
Re-register everybody then?
Well, we don't have anybody registered anyway. We don't know who's registered. We got dead people registered. We got people moved away. We got fake people registered. We got people 35 different registrations with slightly different data. Yes, sir, with your hand up and back. Yes, sir.
Yeah, conventional wisdom would show that New York's going to go for Kamala.
Yeah.
Ohio's going to go for Trump. So why are they monkeying around in Ohio and New York? We can't have Kamala winning 48 out of 50 states. That would look sort of suspicious. So wouldn't they just be monkeying around in the battleground states?
No, they monkey around in all the states, so they've got it if they want it.
So they got what?
They have it if they want it.
So
Because New York right now might be going for Kamala, and Ohio right now might be for Trump. But in 2004, Ohio could easily have gone for Kerry, and almost did. If it wasn't for Ken Blackwell, Ohio would have gone for Kerry. I wrote a book with Ken Blackwell. Ken Blackwell was a close friend. I wrote a book on the family to help him get elected when he was Secretary of State.
So you're saying the trigger is there for them to pull it if needed?
If needed. And to pull it as needed, because remember, they can use this in a state election. They can use this in a congressional election. They can use it in an election in New York City. They can use it where they really want to sweep an area and have all Democrats in a certain area. Yes, sir, in the back, and then we'll get you all. Yes.
Yeah, so piggybacking on what Tom Hack asked about the correlation between number of ballots and number of votes cast.
Yeah.
That's a common recurring theme we saw in Arizona.
Yes.
The drastic imbalance between number of ballots, etc. Now, one of the things that we're seeing in Georgia, and I'd like your comments on this, it is in a state where I'm highly skeptical of Raffensperger and Kemp. They are actually, at least on record making an effort to get precincts to record the number of ballots, not the votes, not which way they went, right or left, Democrat or Republican, but the actual tangible number of ballots per precinct per day, which seems to me to be a significant step in the right direction. So if you know that you have 4,000 ballots from a precinct, but 6,000 votes are cast for that precinct, you know you're off.
It's a step. It's a step. These are the kinds of things, the kinds of metrics that have to be taken. But the point is, when it's this badly messed up, and it's this easily manipulated, and it's hard to find, you're not going to, you just can't, you can't find it. You can't use it. In other words, okay, so you've got all these mail-in ballots coming in and they're all certified. You've got 100,000 of them. And you've got certified the election in 28 hours. You're going to go out and ask 100,000 people if they're real? Not going to do it. And they don't bother doing it. They don't even think about doing it. That's not part of their procedure. The procedure is simply to reconcile the numbers. And that's certification. Guys who certify are just, mechanics. They're just looking at certain little, does it match? And the numbers match. They're not telling you the election was honest. They're just looking at certain metrics. Those metrics match, they certify. But if the metrics were all false data, they don't know that they're verifying false data. And so when LaRose says this was a legitimate election, he's relying on the certification. He's not understanding how it got there because he didn't understand what it meant to put an algorithm in the state database. And what I'm saying is it's inherently suspect. I'm saying it is prima facie evidence of likely criminal activity. There are only certain reasons you would modify a voter base to make it more efficient, to make it run more efficient, there's certain legitimate reasons. None of these are legitimate reasons. These make it more difficult to run, make it easier for fraud. They're all the wrong reasons. And you're only asking a judge, you're saying, Judge, I'm not accusing anybody of doing anything. I don't even know if this was used. But I want to find out. I want discovery. I want you to allow us to send in an independent team of experts here who are qualified in cryptography and let them tell us if this has been altered by mathematical manipulation. If it has, I want to know, and you should want to know, and people want to know. People demand to know. And they're not going to let the voting go forward unless they do know. Okay, behind you, sir, this woman, then you, sir.
With all the evidence that's been
You next, then behind you. There was one behind you.
Me?
You go first, then she'll go.
Sorry. Of all the evidence that's been presented over these 4 years, countless amounts of cases that have been brought, and there was never anything that was heard, why would this be different?
Because all of those were saying there was voter fraud. And you can't prove that.
So by not saying that, not using that terminology is the difference of...
Yes, I've reframed it.
Okay.
See, I wrote a paper...
What is the terminology you're using?
The terminology I'm using is I'm saying it is inherently suspect that a mathematical alteration was imposed on a voter base. And I want to know if my analysis, the cryptographers I've got who say there's math, I want to know if they're right. So all I want to know is it right? Is it there or not? I'm not accusing anybody of anything. If it's there, then I got more questions.
Won't they dismiss you for not having standing?
No, because I'm not questioning. When I question standing, I'm saying my vote was compromised because somebody stole my vote. I'm saying my vote was compromised because the database is corrupt. And the database is corrupt, that means everybody's vote is corrupt. The database, you say, okay, we're going to run a race here, and we got a clock. The clock's going to time the different lanes. Now, the problem with this clock is that every lane has got a broken clock, and they all tell different times. So I'm going to run the race, and the clock that says it was the quickest wins. No, I don't know that was the quickest render. I know it was the quickest clock. And sometimes that's the quickest clock, and sometimes it's not. Because the clock is so broken, I don't know how it runs at all. Sometimes it doesn't run. Sometimes that runner didn't run. So my clocks are broken, I can't run a race. You can't run a race with broken clocks. I had this woman in purple.
I'm just wondering, from what I understand, that LaRose's office has said that the threat of a legal suit, a lawsuit, prevents him from responding or speaking to
We're not going to, first of all, I'm not going to ask for a lawsuit. I'm going to say to LaRose, you know, before we go out and explain to the public that you weren't willing to look at this, why don't you take a look at it? You don't need a judge to tell you to look at it. I'm telling you this thing's broken. Now you're in charge. I'm telling you, this ship, you take it out of harbor, it's got a hole in the bottom of it, it's going to sink. Now, I recommend you don't have to go to a judge to see if the hole is the bottom of the ship. Before you take it out of harbor, go see if there's a hole down there. If there's a hole down there, fix it before you take it out of the harbor. You, sir, have a question?
I got 3 questions.
Okay, you can have it.
First one is the mechanism you're talking about that's manifested itself in the mail-in ballots. Yep.
It really facilitates mail-in ballot fraud. That's what it's really best for.
Second, I'm involved with Ohio Election Integrity Network.
Yes.
And I'm working in Lorain County. And they've given me 220,000 registered voters in the county. And you can sort it and muck around with the database. But persons who were born in 1900 were obvious outliers. But you're saying that the stakes are reasonable stakes.
Yeah.
All right. Then the last one is, does Ohio Election Integrity Network know about you? Do you know them?
Most of these people do know about me, and since I've I decided about 3 weeks ago to make this a big deal issue. And so I'm now in the very early stages of connecting with everybody and telling them that I can help their data make more sense.
I would love for you to be on the Monday night Zoom and talk for a half hour to everybody in the state that's involved in election integrity.
Okay, well, my email is, my initials, JRLC, Jerome Robert Louis Corsi, JRLC@yahoo.com. You send me an email, we'll get it set up. JRLC@yahoo.com. Sir, the back over there.
Yes, we've had Douglas Frank speak here as well.
I was with him this afternoon.
Okay, so that was
I told Douglas Frank that I'll support him. He agreed he'll support me.
Okay.
We both come to the same. We both come to the same conclusion.
Okay. And then the other question is, why aren't we just doing paper ballots?
Well, I mean, you all. First of all, I started out by saying, "In God always win." Well, you're sovereign. Why you're not demanding? Say we're going to go to paper ballots. We're tired of this stuff. Don't you remember the movie Network where they every up there, we're tired of this. We won't take it anymore. We're done with this. And they tell LaRose, if you don't fix this, LaRose, your career is over. Well, first of all, once people realize that this is the case, and I had everybody in the country talking about Obama's birth certificate, right? Well, I found the birth certificate from which his was faked. And Sheriff Arpaio proved it was fake. He had it done with forensic labs in Europe and across the country. Obama does not have a birth certificate. Before I die, I intend to publish all that evidence. I'll show you who I think was the father. I think the father was a guy named Subud in Indonesia. I think he's Indonesian. That's not the whole question. But the point is, you tell LaRose, you tell all these guys that either they fix this or they better get a career because they're done in politics. And to make that clear. Yes, ma'am, and then you, ma'am.
So paper ballots and hand counting and tallies and all that. Would that fix the whole thing, or what else? Is there another component?
Well, I think, first of all, when I wrote a paper on terrorism in the 1980s, I had a computer model that predicted the outcome of terrorist events. I gave a paper to the National Science Foundation. They recruited me on a group of psychiatrists that advised the federal government on terrorism for about 15 years, quietly, at top secret clearance. I'm not a psychiatrist, but I said I didn't want to become one because they wanted me to be a psychiatrist. I said, you guys all go and find your high school sweetheart and divorce your wife and children and become alcoholic and commit suicide. I'm not doing it. But then I also said, I knew psychology in some ways better than they do. So there's Dr. Erickson, who I've followed for years since I was about 15 years old. He had change, and his principles of change are this. If you are having problems in your marriage, you come home and you say to your wife, or she comes home and tells you, we need to go to a marriage counselor. You go to a marriage counselor, you rearrange the furniture in the living room, nothing changes. You haven't changed anything. Come home and say, honey, I think you better get yourself a divorce lawyer because I got one this afternoon I filed for divorce. We're getting a divorce. Everything changes. It'll never be the same. Now, how's it going to turn out? I don't know. It's going to be different. Maybe they stay together, maybe they don't. But it's changed. So the first thing I do when I encounter these situations is produce change. In other words, I want to throw a wrench in this thing and break it. Foobar, broken. What are we going to do next? Well, I don't know. What are we going to do next? We're not going to do this. We're not going to run this system. We're going to tell you what the Democrats were planning to do, so they can't do it. Tell you they've already run the election. That's why they're so confident they can have Camilla. They can have Camilla and Shamella. They can have AI. Because they've already done the election. And they don't need anybody to vote. Okay, and they're running a Truman Show. They have you all think you're out there trying to make it vigilant by finding the people that are double registered. You're finding the people they wanted you to find. You're finding the people they didn't plan on using. You're not finding the ones they created. You won't find them. Just like you won't find the deep state agents who did this. Now, you had a question of you, sir. Yes.
So my question is reference to what the gentleman said about paper ballots. So Governor Youngkin in Virginia, what got into him that he figured this out? And is this really going to save Virginia to have paper ballots with this executive order?
Yeah, we're going to have. First of all, I just want to create a national crisis. I mean, if you look at my career, I'm pretty good at creating chaos. Just getting everybody all buzzed up about things. I sometimes go into a hotel room. I went to the Paramount Hotel when I wrote Abomination in Washington, D.C. I checked in, turned on the television, read the news, they're talking about me. Changed the next channel, they're talking about me. The next channel, all the channels are talking about me. They're all trashing me. I said, I think I better go down and have a drink. They just made me $1 million. It just caused chaos. And throw it back at them. So they can't do this. Call them on their game. How are we going to fix it? We don't know, but we're not doing this. How are we going to fix this marriage? I don't know, but we're not doing the marriage the way we did it. It's either over or it's fundamental change. And my guess is it's probably over because fundamental change is unlikely. So this is change. It's chaos. Nobody goes to sleep tonight thinking it's the same. Everybody goes home tonight sleeping thinking the world's changed. Yes, ma'am.
So what's the solution if all of this goes nowhere or does create chaos and then Kamala's like, well, I guess we're not going to have the election?
Well, we're going to have the election. But Kamala is not going to be smugly in there because they cheated, because you all have been shown the movie already. You've seen the movie. Now you've seen the movie. When they play it, you know you're watching a Truman Show.
So I think you would agree that in 2020, when we woke up and found out that Trump didn't win, that was an incredibly chaotic moment, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
So you're talking about your goal is to create chaos. How are you going to top that, brother?
Well, I'm going to create chaos before it happens.
Ooh.
Before it happens.
It's continual chaos.
Yeah, it's going to cause chaos.
The whole thing about doing audits. Well, no, you don't have the data.
Let's cause chaos before it happens. And let's realize that the truth is, Kamala's got a very small following to begin with.
So did Biden.
And they lost. They lost massively. And the cheating occurred. If we do this, cheating is stopped, at least stopped, because we've caught the scheme. You're not going to go
but they
play.
Don't care. They don't care that you know the scheme.
Okay.
It's all set. They don't care because no audits.
Okay,
right?
now, well, I admire your defeatist attitude.
No, I am an optimist. You don't know me. I am an optimist.
Now,
but you're on the wrong trail, brother.
No, we're not. Because what you do is you break it first, and then the fix has to be put together in a way that is going to paper ballots. That may be a solution.
Same day.
We may have paper ballots and voter ID may be a solution.
Registration same day.
Registration same day may be a possibility, but it's also problematic.
Of course.
So, in other words, there's got to be a fix put in place that has to do with perhaps ending mail-in ballots. That'll about end 90% of it. And it may be a fix that says we're going to have paper ballots. There may be 3 or 4 different fixes. There may be different fixes in different states. There may be putting people in the polls to really watch them and have validation go on much more carefully while people are voting. Yes, sir.
It seems like with all these extra registrations that you can add to the vote total because Trump was bragging that he got the most votes that any president ever got, and Biden got all these votes, 80 million or whatever. Can they take votes away, or can they just add? Because
well, you can, at the point where, first of all, the first goal is not to let voting happen with these systems in place. The systems are broken; they can't be used. Okay, now that's going to take. People are going to say, okay, now the next, well, what do we do? Well, what we've got to do, first of all, is start thinking about it and have a variety of solutions. I don't know for sure what we're going to do. We're going to do something different. We're not going to do that. We're going to do something different. Okay, and we're going to do something different that has in mind that the people we're playing with cheat. So we're not going to deal with them as honest. We're going to deal with them as we're dealing with cheaters. Okay, and now once we've got these principles established, we're going to say, just because votes were taken, until we know how the votes were taken, we know more about them, they're not necessarily countable. So in other words, we're going to have to really rethink the entire system. Okay, now how are we going to do that in a short period of time? Well, whatever we come up with may be a midterm fix. Fixing this problem may take years. It may take the blockchain. It may take all kinds of creative solutions. Look, we've gone from population when I was born, 1946, of something like 115 or 140 million people to 350 million people. Now, a difference in size is a difference in phenomenon. You take a bumblebee and you make it 10 times bigger, the critter won't fly because it's a different phenomenon. The dynamics don't work. Well, at 350 million people voting, you got a different system than you got when 100 million people are in the country. That 100 million people are in communities, they know each other, they know who's voting. 350 million people, nobody knows anybody, especially in the big cities. And they count on that. So we're going to have fundamentally different, but if the credit card systems can work, you can have systems which are accountable and that do work. It's not impossible if you resolve to make them honest to begin with. If you resolve to make them criminal, they'll never fix it. But people aren't going to play in a crooked casino. So we got a crooked casino here. Well, you don't keep a crooked casino going because you can't figure out how to fix it. Close it down and reopen it legit. Because otherwise, nobody's going to go to it. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, this is somewhat of a repetition. It's three parts. Do you have enough time to change the election? Can LaRose actually stop the election and say, we're not going to hold it in November because we found problems with it? Because the reason I ask that, because every time I approach LaRose with a question, it's like, oh, I can't do that. I have to have the legislature change things. I can't do paper ballots. The legislature has to do that. And in light of all these problems, why should we even vote if the machine is going to change the vote anyway?
Well, the point is now LaRose has got a new problem. He can't shuffle it off. In other words, say, okay, LaRose, if you can't figure out a solution, then let's get somebody in here who can. And if it takes the legislature, let's call a special session of the legislature, let's get everybody together, and let's spend a few days and televise it and figure out what the solutions are.
So you think DeWine would do that? Call a special?
Well, if the people of the state know that the casino's rotten, and he's going to demand that you go to the rotten casino and lose your money, I don't think he's going to be governor for very long. I don't think he's going to be dog catcher. People are not going to put up with it. And people are not going to put up with corrupt politicians once they see they're corrupt. The first thing is, again, go back to the principle I started with. In the end, God wins. In the end, when people see the evil, they're not going to put up with it. Now, some will say, we can't solve this, it's too broken, it'll just be broken. There'll be people who are negative about anything at all, but since what we got, you got a broken car. I used to use an analogy when I was teaching people about terrorism and psychology. I'd say, I got a drawer here, and I'd pull out the drawer and I'd say, this is my dead dog. That was a great dog. That dog used to run and play, and I really like this dog. So look at how much fun that dog is. So what's dead? Well, it's a little bit dead now, but it's just asleep. It's my dog. It's delusional. Dog's dead. It stinks. Got to bury it. Not going to come back and play. Okay? And so, therefore, when you got a dead dog, you can't revive it. It's dead. Casino's broken. Boat's going to sink. Airplane's going to come down. Patient's going to die of cancer. Nothing we can do about it. We're not going to pretend that we can fix it. We're going to pretend this case is lost. We're going to want to make sure it doesn't happen again if we can prevent it.
I was talking to someone today that said back when Donald Trump was elected that the systems were set like this, like you're talking, like they were cheating for Donald Trump, and that's how he became president.
You'll find that the left blames you for what they're doing all the time. They give themselves away all the time. They project onto you what they're doing. You listen to them, they tell you how they're lying. Yes.
Okay, I heard the 2020 election fraud was based on something called hammer and scorecard.
There's lots of different versions of different things that happen.
Is that kind of what this is?
No, there was some. It's a whole different issue.
Okay.
But
my other question.
But some of these things did happen. So, in other words, what I've found will validate a lot of the things people have seen. It's going to validate a lot of people's data. When I get out there with this, a lot of people are going to be saying, well, what Corsi found explains what I've been saying. And I'm going to agree with them. It's the same with Dr. Frank today. We got on the phone, we said, we're doing the same thing. We agreed. I'll support you, you support me. Because we're saying the same thing. There's algorithms.
Yes, I want to know, how do we best help you? Is there a place where we can direct others to?
Yeah, send everybody to gods5stones.com. G-O-D, no apostrophe S, spell out 5, F-I-V-E-S-T-O-N-E-S. Donate $5, $10. But more importantly, a lot of the data is up there for you to see, and there's going to be more. So that's going to be where it's a 501c3. It's a tax deferred. It's educational. Its purpose is to show you how the cheating is done. Okay, it's
.org or
.com. Gods5stones.com.
Should we vote Day of the election or voter or what's the?
Well, right now it doesn't make any difference because it's all written. But what you got to do is you got to say, you got to let everybody in the state know we're done with this. We're throwing this one out in the sewer. This one's going down the toilet. We're flushing it. No good. We don't need it. What's that? Yes. One more question. Okay, well, yes, sir.
Frank LaRose says he has the gold standard, okay, for Ohio, and 99.98% accurate. 99.98% accurate. So how do we respond to that?
He's saying he's 99%?
He's saying it's, his elections are 99.98% accurate, and he has the gold standard.
Well, I might say you might want to revisit that thought. We'll give him the opportunity to correct that idea.
Is there anything you would say or respond to that?
Well, I think the thing with, okay, let's talk about LaRose and the position he's in. We're giving him a chance to be a hero. We're giving him a chance to say, look, we found something here that you have a duty to tell the people if I'm completely wrong or if the data's been manipulated. And you got to listen to my experts because I got this whole army of experts over here who say I'm right. And all they want you to do is look and see. Now, if you're not willing to look and see, these experts are saying you're wrong. These experts are saying you're not doing your job. And they're not going to be quiet about saying that. What would be best to be to get in front of this and to say, okay, I said they're 98. Now I've been challenged. This is something I didn't think about. This is new. Let me see if that's still right. Because if it isn't right, I want to be 98% correct. And I'm going to take responsibility and I'm going to fix it. In other words, Rose has a chance to be a hero here. If he isn't a hero, he'll be a scoundrel. It's his choice. Personally, I don't care what he does. I don't even know the guy. But he's got a choice to make. And that choice is going to be pressed on him. Now, I'm here to do it politely. I'm here to ask him to do it. I'm here to explain it to him. I've been in the state here now for a few days. I'll stay over the weekend if we happen to talk to him. I've talked to several people already who are pretty influential in the state and are of the opinion that this, what I want done, ought to be done. And their positions of authority and their positions of responsibility, and they're handling it responsibly. This is evidence that is not, I've got a history now. I've been doing this for 20 years. I haven't been wrong about a lot of things. I don't press issues until I know I'm right. This one is mathematically certain. It's indisputable. It's like my book on JFK. The forensic evidence of the X-rays, Dr. Manick, spent 30 years working on it. X-rays show he was shot twice from the front. You can see the shots in the X-rays. You can see the lies. And he's brilliant enough to have made a rock-solid case of it. They don't even attack that book. Well, they can't attack this either. And as we press this issue, it's we the people that demand sovereignty, demand fair elections, demand fixes, and demand the cheating stop, demand that our kids be protected, and demand God coming back into our lives, and demand the criminals go to jail, and that the people who are protecting their homes and their families with weapons responsibly are allowed to do so under the Second Amendment, and Satan goes to hell and stays there for 1,000 years.